They say you should never meet your heroes, and very sadly, I will never get the chance to meet one of mine. But what I can do is meet the boat, and more importantly, share with you the story of Donald Campbell and Bluebird K7. This is arguably the most iconic boat of all time. It's what helped him set no less than 7 world water speed records, and ultimately led to his untimely death in January 1967. And thanks to its current custodians, the Ruskin Museum in the Lake District, and its current location here at the RMYC, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Poole, where it has come for a couple of days to be reunited with this, the World Water Speed Record Cup. We have got the chance to get up close and personal with the most extraordinary piece of history and boating memorabilia there has probably ever been. This is Bluebird K7. I am Hugo Andreae, and you are watching Motorboat and Yachting. Let's go and take a closer look. Now, for those of you who don't know the story of Donald Campbell and K7, Donald was himself the son of a very prolific world water speed record breaker, Sir Malcolm Campbell. But when he died in 1949, his son Donald then took up the challenge to try and wrest back the world water speed record from its American holders. But he realized very quickly that in order to do that, he'd need a completely different kind of boat. His father had set the record in propeller-driven craft, a craft called Bluebird K4. But Donald realized that he needed something different. The future was jet-powered. And in fact, fellow record breaker John Cobb had himself built a jet-powered boat, which very sadly crashed and killed John Cobb, but set a precedent that this was the way forward. So Donald himself commissioned a brand new boat. It was designed by brothers Ken and Lou Norris and built at Samlesbury Engineering. And you can see all of that clever thinking on display here today. It's what's known as a 3-pointer design. So it has 3 contact points with the water. It has sponsons either side of it and a central hull with a very small planing pad right at the back. Now, one of the key differences between this and John Cobb's boat, Crusader, is that this has the 2 sponsons forward. It's what's known as a pickle fork design. You can see it's got 3 points at the end and then that 1 point at the rear. Now, crucial to achieving the higher speeds that it was designed to do 250 miles an hour originally, is this very low frontal area. So it needed to be aerodynamically super efficient. It also needed to be immensely strong, and it has been designed and engineered much like an aeroplane. So it has a steel ring frame chassis, and if you look down here into the engine bay has been removed at the moment, or the jet engine has been removed, but you can see these steel rings that provide immense rigidity, and these are covered with a very light, thin aluminium skin. And I apologize now if I'm feeling a little emotional and even a bit shaky, because just to be in the presence of something so extraordinary is deeply, deeply moving. And this is the original boat. It's not a replica. This is the actual boat that was recovered from the bottom of Coniston Water. So let's take a little bit of a closer look and actually feel and experience what it must have been like. Because when it was finally built in 1954 and launched, Donald Campbell then did take it onto Ullswater in the Lake District in 1955, and after much tweaking and fine-tuning, set a new record of 202 miles an hour. So he did achieve his goal. It was the very first boat to exceed 200 miles an hour. And you might have thought that that would be enough. He'd achieved his goal, he'd wrested the record back. But no, when it's in the blood, it's truly addictive. And he then went on to set a further 6 world water speed records, culminating in 1965, I believe, when he became the only man ever to set both a land and water speed record in the same calendar year. You might have thought that at that point he would have resigned or retired, because frankly the survival rate of people who take on the world water speed record is not good. Around half of everybody who's tried it has died in the attempt. But he wanted to achieve one final goal, and that goal was to do 300 miles an hour on water. And in January 1967, he took the boat to Coniston Water. It had been significantly modified to achieve higher speeds. It had a new Bristol Siddeley Orpheus engine with over 4,500 pounds of thrust. It had a new tail fin, which Campbell had recovered from a Nat jet aeroplane. It had extra thrust. It had a new water brake. This is the hydraulic water brake. He set off on the first run and hit a peak speed well in excess of 300 miles an hour with an average speed of 297. Now, in order to achieve a world water speed record, you need to complete a run in 2 different directions over a measured mile. So having completed that first run, he turned the boat round, set off again at even faster speed. And once again, the hills around Coniston echoed to the roar of that massive jet engine. Now this time he really went for broke. It's said that he reached a peak speed of well over 320 miles an hour. But at that point, things started to go tragically wrong. One of the sponsons started to lift and shake around. The whole boat started to bounce up and down furiously on the water. And tragically, the nose lifted, the whole boat flipped up, and it crashed, did a complete somersault and crashed back down into the water, breaking in half and instantly killing Donald Campbell. Now, that happened around about here. The boat broke in half, the whole thing sank, his body sank to the bottom, and for the next 33 years, it lay at the bottom of Coniston waters. But with the advent of ever better technology, it was located, and in 2001, with the approval of the Campbell family, the boat itself and Donald's body was lifted from the lake. His body was reinterred, and the boat itself was painstakingly restored over the next 10 years by Bill Smith and the Bluebird project, before finally being handed back to the Ruskin Museum, where it now resides. So let's just take a little bit of a closer look at this extraordinary machine. You can see the passage of time where this boat lay on the bottom of Coniston Water, some 127 feet down. You can see just, in some ways, how crude and how basic it is, but also what an extraordinary achievement. It is literally just bolted aluminium, hand-beaten panels onto this ring frame. These sponsons are not original because they did eventually float back up to the surface sometime earlier and have long since been lost to the passage of time. But this nose cone itself, the main body, most of the metalwork is indeed original. And just look at some of these iconic, that is the Bluebird logo made famous by the Campbell family over the years. The British and Scottish flags. And you can see on the design here, so just how flat this surface here requires to lift up out. It starts the plane at about 150 miles an hour, has little strakes on it to keep it straight when it's coming up to speed. And then if we look into the cockpit itself, these are the air intakes. So crucially, one of the big differences was to keep the center of thrust as low as possible so that if the engine blew out or throttled back, it wouldn't upset the balance. So this is the air intakes. These obviously lift out. The air rushes in there, gets compressed and thrust out the back of the jet engine and keeps it powering forward. And just look inside at this cockpit. It's extraordinary to think that this is the place where Campbell sat and wrestled with this beast of a machine. We've got this very simplistic speedometer marked in hundreds of miles an hour. Imagine looking down at that, trying to maintain control as it shook in front of him. This is not the original wheel, but it is a faithful replica, and it's like a very thin, huge diameter steering wheel from a classic car, not some 300 mile an hour water speed record breaker. Got very basic controls. We've got a bilge pump, just as you'd find in a normal boat. We've got an igniter, a boost pressure gauge, and that is that hydraulic brake which I showed you earlier, and a very simplistic seat with a pair of seatbelt straps. Now, there would have been a glass cockpit canopy over here. That was obviously lost in the crash itself, and I believe they are now having one re-engineered, because remarkably, the future of this boat is not just to stay as a one-off museum exhibit. It is restored to fully working order, and they have secured a jet engine that will be fitted to it, and in 2026 the idea is for this boat to return to Coniston Water and once again run at speeds of over 150 miles an hour. I very much hope that I will be there on that day to witness its extraordinary return to the water. Like I said, it is for me the closest I can get to one of my very greatest heroes, and just seeing it here today is sending shivers down my spine. But to see it run on Coniston again will complete something of a personal quest for me. So I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at this extraordinary machine. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've enjoyed seeing it, please do like and subscribe, and we'll bring you more remarkable boats as soon as we can.